Okay, I think it's time we have the discussion that I've been thinking about talking about for the past 3 or 4 weeks. I believe the time's now. Was Bryce Young the wrong pick for the Carolina Panthers? Was he the wrong move? If CJ Stroud is the Panthers starter, are we at least, closer to 500? I'm not saying that we would be competing for a playoff spot, but would we be closer to 500? My answer to that is no. Like, I think even if we had number 7 leading our offense, I think we might be more than a one-win football team, but I don't think we'd be much more. I just think that people don't really understand just how bad the Panthers quarterback situation is. Like, it may just be the worst spot for a rookie quarterback to come in and try and change the team. More on that when I try and talk about Bryce. But, like, honestly, even if CJ's the starter, I think he'd be taking much of the same heat that Bryce takes from week in to week out. Because, honestly, like, it'd still be the same deadbeat receiving core, same awful coaching, same awful offensive line. Like I said, we will talk about that more in a second. Would Frank Reich still have his job if CJ Stroud is at the helm at quarterback? I just don't think so. I think Frank was destined for failure from David Tepper. I just don't think he'd have a job. I don't think he's a good coach, but I don't think he would have had a job anyway. Even if he did, he might have made it past the season, and then he would have gotten fired in January. But, like, I'm going to try and be as non-biased as possible as I try and talk about Bryce and whether he's a mistake for the Panthers. But just know that I am a diehard Panthers fan. I love Bryce Young. I've wanted him from the start. I wanted him before the Panthers had the number 1 overall pick. And I simply will not switch on that. I'm going to continue to back my guy. I am not switching up on BY at all. I just can't do it. Because that would be giving up on what I actually believe. And what I actually believe is that Bryce Young is going to end up being a baller, and then all y'all Bryce haters are going to have to either hide, lie, and say that, oh, I thought Bryce was him from the start, or have to apologize and be like, oh, shoot, I was wrong about Bryce. The Panthers got it right. They have a star quarterback now. What was I thinking? I really do think that is coming. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. Bryce has struggled this year. He's not been good, like, by any means. 2,100 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The guy hasn't thrown a passing touchdown since Dallas on the 19th of November. That's not good. We're coming up on a month since Bryce has thrown a touchdown. There's several parts to this, I believe. Part of that is his deadbeat receivers, like I said earlier. I mean, Adam Thielen, who's old as dirt, is his best receiver. Part of that is the plays he's having to run. Thomas Brown is a terrible offensive coordinator. The offensive line is the worst in the NFL, and they don't care about how much Bryce gets beat up. Like, every time Bryce gets hit, I'm like, oh gosh, please get up, please get up, please get up. Because, like, he just gets abused every game. But, like, part of it has to go on Bryce himself. He's missed some throws. He's made some awful reads. Like, I won't lie. But I think it comes down to, I don't think it's a talent issue at all. I think Bryce is very talented. It's the fact that Bryce is a typical NFL rookie. And CJ Stroud having the year that he's had has made it so much harder for Bryce. I won't take anything away from CJ. CJ has been incredible. But I just don't think people realize just how rare that is. And, like, how much of a jump it is from college to the NFL. Like, I joke all the time that, oh, Georgia could beat the Panthers this year, or like, oh, Michigan would smoke the Panthers, but like, then I have to come back from whatever planet I've been visiting that week. I have to come back to reality and be like, even though the Panthers are terrible, they're still professionals. They still play in the National Football League. They get paid millions and millions of dollars. They would beat a good college team. They just would. So the jump from college to the NFL, it's absolutely huge. And Bryce got spoiled at the University of Alabama. He had receivers like John Mechie and Jermaine Burton. He had a guy at running back like Jahmyr Gibbs, who's absolutely tearing it up for the Detroit Lions. He had the best offensive line. He got to play under the GOAT of college football, Nick Saban. Like, the NFL's been a culture shock to Bryce, and that's okay. There's this thing called quarterback development that we have to let play out. And once that development has happened, yeah, then we can have that discussion, oh, is Bryce really bad? We can't talk about that right now. Like, I hate to say this because it's going to sound like every other Bryce defender, but it's really not all Bryce's fault. Some of it is. But honestly, I'd say like 65% of it, maybe heading towards 75, is not Bryce's fault. It's stuff that's out of his control. Part of it is the team he plays for. He has come into a horrible franchise. I hate to say it, but my Panthers are a dumpster fire of an organization. If you want to know how I really feel, go watch my David Tepper video. But let me simplify it for you. We have a terrible owner. We have a terrible GM. We have a terrible coaching staff. Like, you can't expect Bryce to come in and just change all that. You just can't. Like, he can't fix everything. Then you give him a terrible receiving core, an awful offensive line. Like, he's destined for failure. Like, I think he'll turn out fine. I really will. As long as he doesn't get hurt, as long as his confidence stays up, I don't worry about Bryce. I'll defend him on Twitter as much as I have to. But I don't believe Bryce Young was a mistake. I don't believe the Panthers picking Bryce Young was a bad thing. I think we'll look at this 5 years from now and be like, wow, I can't believe people thought this guy was actually a bust. The real mistake is the fact that we didn't really build around him in the offseason. Now, I get it. We didn't trade for the draft pick to select him until March. But, like, we at least could have had an idea that those thoughts could have been conspiring. Like, we did not build our free agency around Bryce Young. We might have built it for a rookie quarterback to come in, but I don't think we did. But they say they did. But even in the draft, after we had drafted Bryce Young, the Panthers passed on my number one receiver, which is North Carolina's Josh Downs, who's absolutely been great in Indianapolis, for Jonathan Mingo, who has looked not very good this year. But I'm going to give him the same treatment like Bryce. Maybe he'll develop and be really, really good. But it's just hard for me just because I am also a North Carolina fan. So, again, some of this bias is coming in. But, like, Josh Downs is a Charlotte guy. He's probably a Panthers fan growing up. And it would have made a lot of sense. He's a speed guy. He would have been able to create that separation. But, you know, whatever. That one I'm not as upset about. But, like, the offensive line we obviously did not do enough with. It's just really, really bad. Like, we did not build around our franchise quarterback. The minute we see this change is like the minute that we actually buy in and get a guy, a head coach who wants to get Bryce's strengths out, that plays to Bryce's strengths, that wants to develop him, that wants to come in and be like, you know what, dude? Like, this is what we need to do to get you better. Things will change. The Panthers need to find a new GM. Scott Fitterer is not the answer. We need to find a GM that is competent, that wants to build a team around Bryce. We have to fix the offensive line. We have to get some receivers. Things will change if that happens. The hope is not completely lost on this team. It is for this year. This year's going to be a dumpster fire, and we don't have a first-round pick. But, like, there are many solid free agent wide receivers that the Panthers could target in the offseason. And I don't want to sound like David Tepper in a press conference, but if I could say one thing to Panthers fans and talking about Bryce Young is we have to be patient for just a little bit longer. It's not going to be long, I promise. But Bryce has to develop, which I know is so hard and it's so foreign in today's NFL. That means there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be games like some of the ones this year where he's played absolutely terrible, but he needs to develop, he needs to learn so that he can be the player that he's meant to be. I don't think Bryce was a mistake at all, and I believe that actually he was the right pick for the Carolina Panthers if we can build around him.